What kind of friendship leaves behind a piece of land instead of a trophy? Imagine receiving an acre of land overlooking one of the most famous cemeteries in the American West. Not as a business investment or a publicity stunt, but as a deeply personal gift from someone who understood exactly what it would mean. Years later, after that friend is gone, the land remains far more valuable than any Hollywood award because it carries the weight of loyalty, shared memories, and a bond that survived long after the cameras stopped rolling. That extraordinary gift tells us more about the friendship between Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer than any headline or tribute ever could. When the world mourned Val Kilmer, Kurt Russell chose not to deliver the polished, sentimental speeches that often follow the death of a Hollywood icon. Instead, he spoke with remarkable honesty, remembering both Kilmer's brilliance and his complexity. He recalled a fiercely dedicated artist, a friend who challenged people as much as he inspired them, and a man whose final days revealed the same quiet determination that had defined his entire career. Having spent decades in the entertainment industry, Russell understood the difference between paying tribute and telling the truth, and his reflections offered something far more meaningful than a conventional farewell. Kurt Vogel Russell's own story began on March 17, 1951, in Springfield, Massachusetts. Growing up in a family already connected to the entertainment world, acting was never a distant dream, but a natural part of everyday life. His father, Bing Russell, balanced careers as both a professional baseball player and a respected character actor, giving his son an early look at how Hollywood really worked. After the family relocated to California, Kurt entered television at an age when most children were still discovering their hobbies. By just 12 years old, he was already starring in the Western series The Travels of Jamie McFeeters, carrying the lead role rather than making brief appearances. Throughout the 1960s and early 1970s, Russell became one of Disney's most recognizable young stars, appearing in a steady stream of wholesome family films that established him as a dependable and likable performer. Although he appreciated the opportunities, he disliked being confined to a carefully crafted image. The industry viewed him as the clean-cut Disney actor, while he believed he had far more to offer. During this period, he also pursued professional baseball seriously enough that it could have become his lifelong career, but a shoulder injury abruptly ended those ambitions. Instead of seeing it as defeat, Russell treated it as an opportunity to reinvent himself on his own terms. That reinvention arrived in 1979 when director John Carpenter cast him as Elvis Presley in a television film. Many doubted whether the former Disney star could convincingly portray one of music's greatest legends, but Russell proved every skeptic wrong. His performance earned an Emmy nomination and demonstrated a level of emotional depth that audiences had never associated with him before. Rather than simply imitating Elvis's appearance and mannerisms, he captured the loneliness, confidence, and quiet sadness that made the icon so compelling. The performance marked the beginning of one of Hollywood's most successful actor-director collaborations. The partnership between Russell and Carpenter soon produced Escape from New York, introducing audiences to Snake Plissken, the hardened antihero who would become one of Russell's most beloved characters. Unlike the wholesome roles of his earlier career, Snake was dangerous, cynical, and unforgettable. Russell has often described the role as his personal favorite because it finally allowed him to break free from the limitations that had defined his image for years. They followed that success with The Thing in 1982, a science fiction horror film that initially disappointed at the box office, but gradually earned recognition as one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Russell's portrayal of helicopter pilot R.J. McCready anchored the film with remarkable intensity, transforming an already suspenseful story into a lasting cinematic classic that continues to influence filmmakers decades later. Russell's career continued to expand with Silkwood in 1983, where he starred opposite Meryl Streep and earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Yet the film proved significant for another reason. During production, he met a young actor who had accompanied Cher to the set. That actor was Val Kilmer, a recent Juilliard graduate whose quiet confidence immediately caught Russell's attention. Years later, Russell recalled sensing that Kilmer possessed an uncommon seriousness about acting. He wasn't loud or eager to impress people. Instead, he observed everything around him, absorbing experiences that would later shape his performances. Russell recognized that dedication because he had cultivated the same attitude throughout his own career. Although they would not share the screen for another decade, That first meeting quietly laid the foundation for a friendship built on mutual respect for the craft of acting. Val Edward Kilmer's path had begun in Los Angeles, where he was born on December 31st, 1959, before growing up in the San Fernando Valley. His extraordinary talent earned him admission to the Juilliard School at an exceptionally young age, making him the youngest student ever accepted at the time. Kilmer approached acting with the discipline of a scholar, carefully studying every role until he completely immersed himself in the lives of the characters he portrayed. His early career included Broadway performances alongside Sean Penn and Kevin Bacon before he entered films with Top Secret and Real Genius. Both movies showcased his remarkable versatility, but it was Top Gun in 1986 that transformed him into an international star. As Tom Iceman Kazansky, Kilmer created an unforgettable rival to Tom Cruise's Maverick. Although he initially resisted accepting the role because he feared being permanently labeled as the villain, his restrained and confident performance became one of the film's defining strengths. Success, however, brought new challenges. Kilmer cared far more about artistic integrity than maintaining the polished public image expected of Hollywood celebrities. While his performances consistently earned praise, stories about creative disagreements with directors and producers began to shape his reputation. Even so, his work in films such as The Doors, True Romance, and Heat demonstrated an extraordinary level of commitment that continued to earn admiration from audiences and fellow actors alike, confirming him as one of the most gifted performers of his generation. He was never the loudest presence in a scene, yet he was always the one you couldn't take your eyes off. Between The Doors and Heat came Tombstone, the 1993 Western whose production history has been described, depending on who tells it, as anything from troubled to outright catastrophic. The film's original director, Kevin Jarre, was replaced early during production. Although George Cosmatos received the official directing credit, Kurt Russell effectively took over much of the creative leadership. By that stage of his career, Russell had a clear understanding of what the film needed to become and refused to let it fall short of its potential. While continuing to deliver a complete performance as Wyatt Earp in front of the camera, he worked closely with Cosmatos to shape the overall direction of the film. It was an extraordinary display of professionalism and commitment, and the final result has gone on to be regarded, more than 30 years later, as one of the greatest westerns ever made. Yet the performance that ultimately defined Tombstone was not Wyatt Earp's. The character audiences continue to quote, "The role that became inseparable from the film's identity was Doc Holliday." More specifically, it was Val Kilmer's unforgettable portrayal of Doc Holliday. Kilmer presented John Henry Doc Holliday as a man fully aware that he was dying and entirely at peace with that reality. Not with bitterness or despair, but with a remarkable lightness that comes from having already released the fears that burden most people. Tuberculosis was slowly claiming his life. He knew it, and everyone around him knew it as well. Yet Kilmer never portrayed the character as tragic. Instead, he embodied him with elegance, a dark, intelligent, endlessly quotable elegance. From the unmistakable Southern drawl and the ever-present handkerchief to the silver whiskey cup and the unforgettable moment when Doc casually spun a tin cup on one finger while Johnny Ringo twirled his pistol, Kilmer transformed every gesture into something magnetic, leaving everyone in the room, and the audience, wondering which man posed the greater danger. Kilmer achieved something extraordinary by making Doc Holliday both the friliest figure in any scene and, at the very same time, the most vibrantly alive. His delivery of the iconic line, "I'm your Huckleberry," consisted of only 4 simple words, yet he infused them with such effortless confidence, amusement, and quiet menace that the phrase became permanently embedded in the vocabulary of the Western genre. If Tombstone is remembered above all for one performance, it is Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday. That distinction becomes even more remarkable considering the film also featured outstanding performances from Kurt Russell, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, Powers Booth, and Michael Biehn, all working at the height of their abilities. When filming concluded, Russell and Kilmer exchanged gifts, a tradition Russell often observed whenever he formed a meaningful connection with a fellow actor. Rather than choosing something ordinary, Russell gave Kilmer an actual burial plot in Boot Hill Graveyard in Tombstone, Arizona. Not as a metaphor, but as a genuine plot in the historic cemetery. He believed it perfectly suited their characters. Doc Holliday, after all, was deeply associated with death. The gift felt appropriate, amusing, and somehow completely truthful. What Russell did not know until the exchange was that Kilmer had chosen an equally thoughtful gift. Instead of a burial plot, Kilmer had purchased an entire acre of land overlooking Boot Hill Graveyard. It wasn't located inside the cemetery, but provided a sweeping view of it. Russell later explained the symbolism with beautiful simplicity. Doc Holliday, he said, was all about death, while Wyatt Earp represented life. Wyatt, therefore, deserved to overlook everything. Reflecting on the exchange, Russell summarized their friendship in a single observation. Doc Holliday was all about death, but Wyatt's all about life. I guess that pretty much says it all. Russell still owns that piece of land today. The years following Tombstone brought Val Kilmer both extraordinary commercial success and significant professional challenges. In 1995, he starred in Batman Forever, the biggest box office success of his career. The film earned hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide and firmly established him as one of Hollywood's most bankable leading men. He had originally been expected to return as Batman in the sequel, but that never happened. George Clooney eventually replaced him amid widespread reports of serious disagreements between Kilmer and director Joel Schumacher during production. The following year, The Island of Dr. Moreau became, by almost every account, one of the most chaotic productions in Hollywood history. By this point, Kilmer's reputation for being difficult had become the first thing many people mentioned whenever his name arose. At the same time, however, his remarkable talent remained equally impossible to ignore. Those two realities existed side by side, as they often do with individuals who possess extraordinary brilliance in their craft while proving exceptionally difficult in nearly everything surrounding it. Whether in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in 2005 or Bad Lieutenant in 2009, Kilmer consistently delivered performances that revealed something deeply authentic. Across 4 decades of acting, he seemed incapable of giving a performance that lacked truth. Then, in 2014, his life changed dramatically with a diagnosis of throat cancer. For the next 2 years, Kilmer chose to keep his illness private, influenced by his Christian Science faith and his profound discomfort with exposing personal vulnerability to the public. When Michael Douglas publicly mentioned the diagnosis during an interview, Kilmer denied that it was true. It was only in 2017 that he finally confirmed the diagnosis himself. Speaking openly, he described undergoing 2 tracheotomies, chemotherapy, and radiation treatments, along with the lasting consequences they carried. His honesty surprised many people who had known only the stories surrounding his reputation rather than the man himself. Although the cancer eventually went into remission, the surgeries permanently altered his voice. The remarkable instrument that had once brought Iceman, Doc Holliday, and Jim Morrison to life had been reduced to little more than a whisper. In 2022, Kilmer wrote on his website, "It isn't easy to talk and be understood." Even so, he never stopped working. In 2021, the documentary Val was released, constructed largely from decades of home video footage that Kilmer had obsessively recorded throughout his career, offering audiences an intimate look into the life, artistry, and humanity of one of Hollywood's most fascinating actors. His son, Jack, narrated the documentary, giving voice to his father's words in a way that sounded remarkably like what Val's own voice might have been, because Val himself could no longer speak clearly enough. It became the most honest work he had ever created. It revealed the obsession, the meticulous preparation, the joy he found in his craft, and the genuine pain of a man who had spent his entire life pursuing something within that craft while never being entirely certain he had truly found it. It also revealed the devastating effects of his illness, what cancer had taken from him, and what still remained. Tom Cruise, once Val's rival and always his friend since their time on Top Gun, fought to ensure that Kilmer would be included in Top Gun: Maverick in 2022. Val returned as Iceman, the role that had launched his career, and the very role he had originally accepted against his own instincts 36 years earlier. His appearance came in a brief yet emotionally devastating scene where Iceman and Maverick finally let go of the rivalry that had defined them for decades and simply said goodbye. Because Val could no longer speak the dialogue himself, his voice was digitally enhanced. The moment felt like far more than just another scene in a film. It carried the weight of a farewell, and as it turned out, that was exactly what it was. Top Gun: Maverick would become the final film of his remarkable career. 3 years before Val Kilmer passed away, Kurt Russell visited him at his home. Later, Russell spoke to Rolling Stone about the experience, describing what it was like to spend time with a friend who could barely speak, who struggled to make himself understood, yet still had meaningful things to say and the determination to say them. Russell explained that speaking had become extremely difficult for Val, but despite that, he still had wonderful things to share and had retained a genuinely good sense of humor. Russell then recalled a moment that stayed with everyone who heard the story. Val looked at him and quietly admitted, "Sometimes, I could have been a little bit nicer to a lot of people." Then he laughed. He was reflecting on his life, looking back with honesty and perspective. Sitting across from him, Russell saw someone who fully understood every part of himself. Not just the public reputation, not the mythology that had surrounded him, and not the image he had spent years performing for the world. He saw a man who could gently laugh at those things with a clarity that serious illness sometimes brings. He was a good guy, Russell later said. Everybody's got their full 360 degrees of their person. Nobody gets out of here alive. So I hope he rests in peace. If anybody deserves to rest in peace, it would be Val. Val Kilmer passed away on April 1st, 2025 in Los Angeles, surrounded by his family and close friends. His daughter, Mercedes, confirmed the news. He was 65 years old. The official cause of death was pneumonia after years of recovering from the throat cancer that had taken so much from him. He was survived by his daughter Mercedes and his son Jack, the two people who had witnessed every chapter of his journey. The extraordinary fame, the struggles, the illness, the late career grace, and who loved him through every stage of that remarkable life. Tributes poured in from every corner, but Kurt Russell offered perhaps the most honest one of all. It was not delivered from a podium or through a carefully prepared public statement, but simply during a conversation. Russell spoke truthfully about a complicated man and a friendship that, despite everything, had always remained uncomplicated. He remembered the gifts they exchanged after Tombstone. He recalled his final visit with Val and the 6 words Val spoke before laughing. Russell said that working with Val Kilmer had been absolutely wonderful. He repeated the simple truth that nobody gets out of here alive. Somewhere in Russell's home, he still keeps an acre of land overlooking Boot Hill, a gift Val had purchased for him back in 1993 because Val understood that Wyatt Earp should always be able to look down upon everything from above. He understood that life ultimately offers the longer view. Val Kilmer understood that deeper perspective. He always recognized the greater truth hidden within every scene. In the end, that became the truest thing about him, the part that survived beyond the reputation, beyond the illness, and beyond everything else. It still lives within his performances. It remains there every time someone watches Tombstone, Top Gun, or The Doors and remembers the feeling of seeing, for the very first time, what Val Kilmer was capable of. Kurt Russell recognized that quality from the very first day he met him. A serious young man wandering around the set of Silkwood, not yet famous, but already completely himself. Even then, he was unmistakably Val Kilmer. If this story moved you, if those films became a part of your life, if Val Kilmer's face, his voice, and his unique presence became woven into the landscape of your memories, leave a comment below. We read every one of them. And before you go, consider this question. Is there someone in your own life whose full 360 degrees you have never truly taken the time to see? The good, the difficult, and everything in between? Because Kurt Russell looked. And what he saw, in the end, was worth the journey. We will see you in the next one.